Hey, I finished the arrangement of Leave a Light On. I've attached it below. Signed, Knut. Attachment, Leave a Light On final version.pdf. Thus far in the series, we've looked at each step of the arranging process, and if you've followed it until now, you'll be pretty close to finish with your arrangement. However, before you press the print button or bounce the tracks from your recording software, let's have a look at a few potential issues that may have popped up while you were working, which we'll have to sort out before we can consider the arrangement ready for a rehearsal. First, if you're arranging by ear, you need to go through your arrangement and make sure you've condensed all the different recordings into a discrete number of parts. It might look something like this at the moment, and we need it to look like this. If you got some idea of which section is going to sing which part already, it'll be easy to move stuff into the right position. However, there's something you need to keep in mind while doing this, and it's something that pops up when doing an arrangement in notation as well. Voice leading, or how well each note in a particular part leads to the next note, is very important in all melodic music making. It's particularly so for voices, as very few singers can pick a note out of thin air, and most are going to be dependent on the information that their ears, eyes, and general musicality can give them. The place where I often spot problems when it comes to voice leading is when transitioning to a new section of the song, so for example from the verse to the chorus, as the later section may have been arranged in isolation rather than as a continuation of the preceding section. The most important thing to look for is sudden jumps up or down in a part, as these can be difficult to sing in tune if not set up correctly. Anything greater than a fifth needs to be handled with care, and should usually be followed by moving in the opposite direction afterwards. I'd avoid jumps larger than an octave unless you know for sure that it'll work. If you've got a section in the song where large jumps happen, try to sing it yourself to see if it feels comfortable. There are some further guidelines for voice leading which may be useful to look at, and I'll cover these at a later time. Sorry, I made some changes to the second chorus. I've attached the new version below. Signed, Knut. Attachment, Leave a Light On final updated version.pdf. A good arrangement is satisfying for all parts to perform, and something to watch out for is too much repetition for a section of singers. This often happens to the bass section when performing pop music, as a lot of pop music uses 4-bar loops, with little variation in the bass part. Some repetition is fine, but once a section of singers is singing the same thing over and over for a long time, chances are they'll get bored, and maybe miss the cue to go to the next section. My favourite trick for avoiding leaving the bassist doing the same thing for a long while is to give them the melody at some point, as most people love to sing the melody. The alto section is also often the victim of too much repetition, or of being stuck singing the extra notes in the chords. However, the alto range is perfectly suited for pop music, so it's definitely a missed opportunity not to give the altos a bit of the melody. You can also have the sopranos harmonizing above the altos to avoid them singing too low. That being said, don't fall into a similar trap, which is almost the same but not quite, where a section repeats something they've sung earlier with 1 or 2 notes changed. What inevitably tends to happen here is that half the singers will sing the line correctly, and the other half will sing the earlier version of the line. I'd sooner recommend too much repetition than almost the same but not quite, as at least the line will be correctly performed every time. If you find that your arrangement has this problem, it might be worth considering a different approach to the section of the song where it happens. Have a look at the episode about backing vocals and see if you can rearrange the section using some of the examples I give there. Actually, there were a few mistakes in the outro, and I wasn't really satisfied with the intro, so I changed that as well. Sorry about this, just delete the other versions I've sent. Signed, Knut. Attachment, Leave a Light On, final updated new version.pdf. Now, let's get our materials ready. If you've been arranging in notation, there's a few commonly missed indications and symbols that we need to make sure are there. Let's do a little test. I'll display a detail from the first page of the Leave a Light On arrangement on the screen, and there will be 5 things missing from it which I need to put in. See if you can find what they are, and pause the video if you need to. Have you found them? Let's take a look. The first is that the name of the artist or composer should be on the first page of an arrangement. There's at least 2 other songs called Leave a Light On out there, and another called Leave the Light On, so this will make sure the singers know which one to search for if they want to listen to it. The second thing I need to put in is the time signature. It's common to see songs in 4/4 without a time signature put in, as notation software tends to default to this signature if none is put in. But we still need to indicate it, or people might get confused. Also, it looks quite unprofessional, and that's not what we're going for. Third is the tempo. Again, notation software defaults to 100 beats per minute, which might be the tempo that your song is in, but there's nothing on this page to tell the performers or conductor how fast the song is. So don't forget to put it in. You don't have to use Italian terminology, as it's commonly done in classical music, just write it in English. Also, metronomes are easily available these days, so you shouldn't have any trouble putting in a metronome marking if this is appropriate. If you Google metronome, there's one built into the search engine itself, so do that if you have to. Fourth, there's no dynamic markings on this music. I can't overstate how important it is to actively use the dynamics when arranging, yet time and time again I see music with no dynamics present. My best tip to avoid this is to not leave the dynamics until the end, but put them in as you work. This way, you're actively thinking about them while you're developing the arrangement, and they may even give you some ideas about how to approach different sections of the song, like going very quiet or loud suddenly, or having a section with continuous growth in loudness until a climax. So don't forget about the dynamics, and make time for them while you're arranging. #dynamics matter. Finally, and this is kind of optional, chord symbols in the piano part are useful to have if you're doing pop music, as they ease reading and make space for the pianist to improvise a little if they want to. Also, if you find that you've got a guitarist for your performance, the guitarist can use the chord symbols to play the music, as they'll be more helpful than the piano notation. But this is optional, and leaving the chord symbols out won't get you arrested. Hey again. There were some wrong notes in the bridge, and I think the alto solo in the outro wasn't really needed, so I removed it. This will be the last version, I promise. Signed, Knut. Attachment, Leave a Light On, actual final updated new version.pdf. Now the arrangement should be well presented and structured, and you'll be ready to teach it to your singers. Before this though, consider making practice tracks for them, so they can learn in their own time, or catch up if they missed a rehearsal. If you've done the arrangement by recording yourself, you can simply export the recorded parts as practice tracks. If you've done the arrangement in notation software, there's also a way to create makeshift practice tracks. Let me show you how you might do this in Sibelius 8. Okay, so I've got my arrangement open in Sibelius here, and the first thing you want to do is go to the Play tab, this one, and press Mixer. You can also use hotkey M if you want to. Now, to make your practice parts, it's pretty simple. You just use this mixer like you would in a recording software. You want to pan the parts to either side, and you want to make sure the part you want to have as the main part in the practice track is on one side and all the others on the other. So I usually put the main part in the left ear and the others on the right ear. So say I want to make a part for the sopranos. I want to pan it to the left, which it's already pretty well panned. And then I want to pan all the other parts over to the right, like so. Next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you crank up the volume of the part that is the main part, and then you put these down to about 70 or so to make sure it stands out. But you don't want to remove them all together, because you do need to be able to hear the other parts somewhat. You can choose whether or not you want to use the metronome. I would probably mute it in this case, because this arrangement has the piano playing on every beat, which kind of works a bit like a metronome anyway. But especially if you have a song that doesn't have this, where it might be hard to find the beat, then having the metronome on is pretty useful. Next thing you want to do is go to the File tab, go to Export, Audio, and you can just export it as Leave a Light On S, for instance, like so. And then, this doesn't really matter. Export. Does it for you. And you just want to do this with all the different parts. It takes a little while, and it's perhaps not quite as good as having recorded parts, but it is something. I also usually make a part that has all the tracks kind of distributed a bit more evenly. So you'd have soprano there, alto there, in this case the baritone's here, and perhaps the piano like here, and sort of put them back to the default position. And then you can get a more sort of neutral practice track, which I like to use because I prefer to hear all the parts sort of equally. But this will depend on your choir, and you can make a judgment call on that based on their skill levels. And that's all there is to it. And there you have it. Your arrangement's finished. Or is it? The real test of your arrangement comes when you're rehearsing it and hearing how the singers get on with it. So in the next episode, we'll look at how the rehearsal experiences can be brought back to the drawing board if you need to revise your arrangement. On second thought, the alto solo was pretty important, so I put it back in. A few changes to the last chorus, and a few fixes in the intro as well. Delete the other versions, this is the correct one. Signed, Knut. Attachment, leave a light on, actual, final, updated new version, the last one.pdf.
La